From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is Jonathan Small and I am your host, and my guest today is Jessica Reilly. And Jessica is a writer who describes herself as a cannabis aficionado. Nice. At about the same time that COVID was really starting to spread in the United States, Jessica left her PR and marketing job and carved out a new career path in cannabis. She runs the Cannabis Creative blog, which features cannabis industry leaders, and she now uses her skills to help cannabis businesses grow and thrive. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jonathan. I'm glad to be here.
So let's talk about this transition. You were working in PR and marketing, and all of a sudden you decide to give it all up for a career in cannabis. That must have shocked your parents a little bit. But tell me about the origin of how did that decision come about?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish it was a straight line from leaving my 9 to 5 to joining the cannabis industry. It was a little bit more convoluted than that. I took about a year of freelancing, kind of just floundering and not really sure what I wanted to do or what direction I wanted to go in. The March of 2020 is the very weird time to leave your job. My partner and I were also moving at that time, and we went into lockdown in the state of New York. So there I was, newly unemployed, not really able to leave this house that we were still doing renovations on. Mm-hmm. And over the course of the year, I really dug down and I asked myself, what do I want to write about? What do I want to focus on? And what is it that makes me happy? And I just kept coming back to cannabis. And I was so resistant to it at first because, well, the internalized stigma, right? I was raised in the suburbs. I was raised with DARE programs. I was raised with, weed is not something that nice girls do. And I had a really hard time bringing myself to admit that this was what I wanted to talk about publicly on social media in front of people that I knew. It was terrifying. But finally, when I called my parents and I was like, Mom, I think this is what I want to do. She was like, you know what? I think that makes a lot of sense for you. And I was like,
great.
Wow. Thank you. That was the best response you could have given me.
What a supportive parents. What had been your background with cannabis? I mean, when did you discover it, and what part did it play in your life?
Yeah, I was a very straight-laced kid in high school. I wouldn't have even known where to get weed in my high school if you had asked me. Yeah. And it really wasn't until I went to college that I was introduced to it. And I actually didn't like it at first because when I first started smoking, I started smoking cigars. And cigars are not like joints and cigarettes.
Do you even inhale cigars?
No, you don't.
Yeah.
That's the big differentiator. So when I first started smoking weed, I wasn't inhaling. Yeah. Because I didn't know that you consumed them differently. And I was like, wow, I must be immune to THC. I just can't get high.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And it took me a couple of years to really understand what I was doing wrong and why I wasn't able to feel the effects. And probably around my junior or senior year was when I really started to figure it out and understand how to consume it to get the effects. And that was when I was first introduced to how weed made me feel, which was so dramatically different than how alcohol made me feel. I felt lighter, I felt more relaxed, but I still felt clear-headed even when I was high. I wasn't out of control. I wasn't falling over or slurring my words. It was just a very comfortable, relaxed state. Yeah. But after I graduated college, I moved back home with my parents. Of course, you're not going to be smoking weed there. And it wasn't until I moved out on my own in my mid-20s that I really started to make cannabis a bigger part of my life. And first I used it to sleep because I've always been a pretty poor sleeper. I had moved into my own apartment. I was a little nervous living on my own in the city, all these new sounds, and I was having a lot of trouble sleeping at night. So I started using a vape cartridge in order to help myself sleep at night. And that was really when I started getting into cannabis for the health benefits that it gave me.
Yeah. So you use it to sleep, and do you use it during work time as well?
Yeah, so that was, probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. I actually no longer use it to sleep. I've had a lot of changes in my health since then. And last summer when I was not working, I was overindulging in THC. And it got to the point where I actually stopped dreaming at night because THC can impact your REM sleep and it can actually decrease your REM sleep. And for people dealing with like PTSD, that's phenomenal because their brain does not give them good dreams.
Yeah.
But my brain gives me lots of good dreams. And it was probably 2 months of not dreaming before I had to take a step back and say, this use of cannabis is not serving me anymore. And I can't continue to allow myself to use it in this way. So now I use it a lot more during the day. I've moved over a lot more to CBD, and I use CBD very frequently throughout the day to boost my concentration and focus because I can be a little squirrely, particularly since I am my own boss. It's hard to keep myself on track. And I use it a lot when I work out, when I do yoga, when I meditate, and when I hike.
That's so cool. How do you consume it? What's your preference?
My favorite way is smoking. I'm a big smoker.
And CBD with you vapes? You do like CBD vapes?
I actually smoke CBD flower. So here in upstate New York, I'm actually super fortunate to have a couple of local CBD farms near me. One about 20 minutes away and one about 2.5 hours away that I purchase from pretty regularly. And I get fresh CBD hemp flower right off their farm and I grind it up and I put it in my joints and my bowls the same way you do with THC.
That's amazing. And that helps you, and that you said that just helps you focus and stay calm during the day?
Yeah, it gives me that extra little bit of mental boost when I'm, really struggling to get my day started or stay focused and get through my to-do list. If I just need a little break, CBD helps me take a break, reset, and then reapproach what I was doing with a renewed sense of focus.
Yeah.
I also like the CBD oils. I am a fan of edibles. The only form I'm really not a fan of is dabbing. The rigs and the concentrates scare me a little bit.
Right. Yeah. It can be a little strong. Talk to me about this transition. It came during COVID times. Did COVID have a lot to do with it? I think a lot of people looked inward during that time because they were physically inward. They were locked in a room looking at their computer, wondering what the heck they were going to do with their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a series of big life changes around the time that COVID happened with leaving my job and moving. My partner and I bought a rental property, which we had to move into while we were still renovating. And he still had to go to work every day. So I was alone in a half-finished house with nothing pulling my attention on a day-to-day basis, except a small list of renovations that I needed to get done. Things like painting, cleaning, things that really did take a lot of mental power. So first, I used cannabis, I think, more to kind of get out of my own head and stop thinking about what I considered a failure at the time. And to just kind of be present with what I was doing and escape that ever tightening circle of doom in my head that told me I was failing because I was turning 26 and unemployed and not where I thought I was going to be at that point in my life. Right. And then I guess as the summer went on, as things started to change, I started to dive more deeply into freelancing. After I left my 9-to-5, I had 2 very bad client experiences that left me over the summer without any clients at all because I needed to take a step back and reevaluate who I was working with, how my processes worked. So after I started to pick things up in my freelance business again, I started to reevaluate how I was using cannabis. And that was when I came to the conclusion that I was relying too heavily on THC. I wasn't dreaming anymore, and I wasn't using it in a way that served me. I was using it as an escape.
Yeah, so interesting. So let's talk about what your business is now and how you make a living now. So first of all, you have this Cannabis Creative blog, which is really great. I've been reading it and I really enjoy it. You don't know this maybe about me, but I actually have a day job as the editor-in-chief of a magazine called Green Entrepreneur, which is a cannabis business magazine. So I've been editing and writing for quite a long time. So props to you. I think you're doing a great job. And so when you start a blog, I mean, it's cool to start a blog, but did you tell me a little bit about the idea behind it? How, did you figure you were going to make money off of it, or was it just to get your words out there? Like, how did you envision it going, and who's it really talking to?
That is a phenomenal question. So I started the blog back in late February, early March of 2021. And starting a blog is something that I've been kicking around in my head for years, probably close to a decade, because I've always known that I wanted to be a writer, but it was something that I really pushed off and ignored and didn't honor about myself. So when I started freelancing, that was the first change. I said, I am going to be a writer. I'm going to be a copywriter. I'm only going to write. And then this year, when I decided to niche down into cannabis, I was leaving behind a lot of clients that I was making money from who were not in this industry to start in a brand new industry. So the Cannabis Creative blog first started because I would get high and write about the fact that I didn't like to talk about my cannabis use.
Only when you were high could you write those stories.
Exactly. Yeah. It's only when I was high could I really get out of my head long enough to just allow the words to flow out of me and say what I wanted to say without judging myself to the point of staring at a blank page for 2 hours. And then it progressed into an outlet that I could do research in, and I could start to build a cannabis knowledge base in and use it to show people I know what I'm talking about. I've done research on cannabis. I'm knowledgeable on the subject. And no, I don't have any client work, but here's where you can check out samples of my cannabis writing. And then I got just an opportunity from, I was cold pitching dispensaries like crazy. And one of them got back to me and said, we're not really interested in working with you, but we see that you have a blog and we'd love to talk to you about a feature. And a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, oh, well, I can do that. I can write features about people. And it was something at first that I tried to monetize because I think as an entrepreneur, you're going to try to monetize everything.
Yep.
But it quickly just became apparent that this was a really good way, not only for me to start to talk to more people in the industry, but to highlight the diversity of people in this industry and the diverse reasons that people were coming into cannabis, starting their own businesses and making a name for themselves by publicly talking about cannabis.
Yeah. Who have been some of the people that you've talked to that have really made an impact on you and really been fascinating to meet?
Oh, that is a phenomenal question.
This is why they pay me the big bucks to ask the phenomenal questions, Jessica.
The first person who comes to mind is a woman named Sarah Stenoff. And I interviewed her on the blog maybe 2 months ago now. Oh, time is flying. She runs one of the hemp farms that's near me. It's called Ananda Farms. And Sarah is a veteran who got into cannabis to help with her PTSD. And she runs Ananda Farms for profit in order to fund her nonprofit organization for veterans called Veterans Ananda, where she provides what she calls farm therapy for veterans. They come on site, they help her on the farms, they stay there. And then off site, she also sets them up with therapy services as well. So talking to her was awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a great story. Has it surprised you talking to all these different people who are either in the business or use cannabis? Has it changed your impression of cannabis since you started this blog that you had before?
It's really broadened my appreciation for the plant because I think when you start using it, there's this sense of, or at least when I started using it really before legalization started becoming the mainstream topic that it is now, there's a sense of shame and, that you're doing something wrong. Even if morally you're not, legally you're breaking the law and it feels heavy.
Yep.
But the more that I talk to people and the more that I hear these stories, the more that I hear that is a very common experience. And people are coming to this plant for the same reasons, for help sleeping, for help relieving stress, for help with depression and anxiety, or to get moving. And it's really solidified to me that a lot of these feelings that make us feel very isolated, particularly concerning cannabis, are the most universal feelings.
For sure. One of the articles I saw that you wrote that I thought was really interesting is about the changing demographics of cannabis. And you wrote, while the stereotype of the weed smoker is someone in their late teens or early 20s, toking it up in mom's basement, the data says otherwise. What is your experience? I mean, you're definitely, and I'm not going to ask you your age. You don't have to tell me, but I can tell you're on the young side, the Gen Z, possible millennial side. What's your impression of, the stereotype versus the reality?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been amazed since I started talking about cannabis, the depth and the breadth of people who are interested in talking about it with me. People who are my parents' age, people who are my grandparents' age are interested in talking about it. They're curious about it. They want to know more about cannabis because people are collectively starting to realize that this information that we've been systemically fed is based on lies and frankly racist nonsense. And anecdotally, I was the first person in my family to really be open about my cannabis use, to start talking about cannabis, tell my parents that I use cannabis, and just really make this a dinner table conversation.
Do your parents use cannabis? They might want me to. publicly.
Since I have explained to my parents the differences between cannabinoids, THC, and CBD, my parents have really been interested in trying CBD products. They're federally legal. They're easy to find. We have a lot of CBD shops here. And I think they've been impressed with how it can make them feel better, help them sleep better, and relieve stress without those psychoactive effects, because neither of them are fans of that. And I can't blame them. There's a lot of people who really don't like the psychoactive properties of THC. Mm-hmm. So since I've been open with it, they've definitely been more interested in CBD and the possibilities that come with legalized cannabis.
Yeah, that's so cool. Now, I hate to talk about money, but I am curious, because let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, God, what she did sounds like my dream job. Just give up what I'm doing and write about something I love, which is cannabis, right? And I'm sure a lot of our listeners love cannabis, love to make a living just being in the business somehow. How are you able to monetize? How are you able to make a living doing what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My main streams of income are from writing for cannabis companies. So primarily is educational blogs. A lot of what I do concerns writing about educational topics around using cannabis, cannabinoids, different studies, emerging cannabinoids, and other like hemp derivatives that scientists are creating. So I read a lot of scientific studies and I translate that into layperson speak.
That's so
and
great.
That's how
Let's talk about, I know you're not a scientist, but as far as the emerging technologies or the emerging science about cannabinoids, we all know about CBD and THC. Have there been other cannabinoids that are come to your attention that you think are worth paying attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them, CBG, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but cannabigerol,
Right.
CBGA. It's the mother cannabinoid, and it's the first cannabinoid produced in hemp and cannabis plants. And it is through the decay of CBGA that we get cannabinoids like THC and CBD, although there's a little bit more to the process there. But that cannabinoid is really interesting because it's incredibly abundant in these young cannabis plants. And we don't know too much about it now, but you're starting to see it pop up more and more when you're looking at full spectrum products, particularly oils. You're starting to see things like CBD oil have a lot higher content of minor cannabinoids like CBGA or CBN, which is a derivative of THC. You get CBN when THC is old and decays.
Yep.
And you see a lot of headlines now that say CBN will put you to sleep. But the science doesn't actually support that. CBN puts some people to sleep, but it seems to be the interaction between whatever remains of the THC and the CBN that puts you to sleep.
That's interesting. So you're in New York. You're about to you have legalized, but it hasn't really kicked off yet. I mean, are you starting to, you mentioned that you go to farms and stuff, but that's for CBD, which is probably legal in New York. But have you started to see some advancements? And like, when do you predict you'll be able to go to a dispensary and buy weed like I can in California?
Oh, bad news
That'll
for
be
any
the
of your
day.
friends. Bad news for any of my friends listening from New York. The Office of Cannabis Management in New York was delayed so weed was legalized in New York in about March of 2021. But the governor that we had at that point, who I will not name because he doesn't deserve it, was doing it more as a political stunt. And after it was legalized, he didn't touch it for 6 months. And that really threw off the entire timeline of legalization. So we have a new governor now. She has appointed people to the proper offices, appointed people to the management positions, and they are currently working on an 18-month timeline to issue business licenses. So we will not really see businesses start to open until late 2023 at this point, which is very disappointing.
Yeah, I think that is very disappointing. I mean, once it opens in New York, it's going to be I'm here in LA. I can't even imagine what New York is going to be like once we get to LA level. Right. But hopefully they learn some of the lessons from LA and the sort of disaster of the way that cannabis went legal here recreationally. Your generation, people listening, when you talk to people about what you do for a living, do you still have a little bit of internal embarrassment or hesitation, like, oh, is this like the right person? And I ask this honestly because I sometimes have this issue. If I'll meet like a preschool teacher of my kids, for example, I'm a little older than you, and they'll say, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, it's like a little moment where I pause and then I say it. And usually people are like fascinated because people are fascinated with the cannabis industry, to be honest with you, I find. But do you still find yourself, or do you feel much, forget it, I don't give a crap, I'm going to tell
I feel much better about it than I did in like February of this year before I really started talking about it. I still have that moment of pause, like you said, right before I say it, where I'm kind of like, how is this going to go over?
Right. Like if you sit next to somebody on a plane, you don't know, they might be like, oh,
Yes. And I've had people who, for them, that shuts down the conversation. They're like, oh, how interesting. And then I've had other people whose eyes light up and they're like, I have so many questions for you. And I'm like, I'm not a scientist, but I will do my best.
What's the question you most get?
When is cannabis going to be legal in New York?
I asked it already.
Down the first one. And it's not always bad news because things are moving forward now, but it is very disappointing to be in a state like New York, which has always been, kind of held up to the Californias, the Oregons, the Washingtons in terms of progressive policies. And to be in 2021, basically at the same pace as a lot of the Midwest and Southern states. It's an area where New York has really fallen down in and really allowed themselves to drop the ball and just kind of say, well, that's not our problem. We're not interested in changing this. And if we say we are, we're really just paying lip service to distract from other bad things our politicians did.
So it sounds to me like you're very happy about the decision you made to change your career. Trajectory of your career.
I am. Freelancing is never easy. Starting your own business is never easy. But the difference between me now and me a year ago is that even on the days where I have to work late, even if I've had a lot of revisions come back on a piece, even if I get frustrated, I'm still writing about a topic that I care very deeply about and that I'm very interested in. I'm no longer writing random pieces about dumpster rentals and the best kinds of glue to buy. It's something that I still really enjoy, and it makes diving into the really complicated studies worth it.
That's wonderful. Well, I am so happy for you and happy that you found this new direction, and it's good to have smart, competent people in the cannabis industry. We could always use more and more. Also, we could always use more women, and I'm so happy that you're involved. Have you ever thought about starting your own plant touching business? Do you think that's in the cards for you? Would you ever think about that? And when I say plant touching, for those of the uninitiated, that's actually when you touch the plant, you make products or you manufacture or you have a brand. Maybe somebody else. Yeah.
I would never say never, but I don't think it's in the cards anytime soon. I am so grateful to finally be writing full time, being able to make a living of it, something that I've wanted to do for so long. I'm really just counting down the days until New York allows home growing, so I could just grow my own plants and not have to worry about crossing state lines to Massachusetts to get weed.
Yeah, that's what you have to do now, huh? You have to drive.
I would never do that. That's illegal.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're not allowed to do that. Sorry.
Bring them over lines.
Yeah, come on. I mean, they've got checkpoints, and you could get in big trouble.
Oh yeah, they're cracking down.
They crack down. Well, Jessica, this has been a pleasure. So great to meet you. If people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Jessica Reilly. I think my LinkedIn name is like Jessica Reilly Writer, so pretty easy to find. And then I am also on Instagram at Cannabis Writer. And LinkedIn is really a lot more about my blog and about the industry. And Instagram is a lot more about education and just talking to people about cannabinoids, about CBD, about different ways to consume weed to make it work for your life.
Right. And the Cannabis Creative blog is asitsounds.com?
Yes. Well, it's a cannabiscreative.blog because it's a $12 a year WordPress site.
That's great. All right,
works.
Jessica, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled that I was able to be here and chat with you and share some things with your audience.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in North America. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information,
head on over to wanabrands.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, brands.com.